Hey everyone, today I'm ranking all the heroes in Battlefront 2 from worst to best. Do bear in mind, none of the heroes are necessarily bad, it's just some are better than others and some can excel in areas where others can't. Another thing I should make clear is that this is my opinion on the ranking of heroes, so some of you may think differently. With that out of the way, let's get into the ranking. So at the bottom of the list, we have BB9E. Now don't get me wrong, BB9E is really fun to play, especially when you're just rolling around at other players' feet, stunning them and picking off their health over time. However, he isn't really that good of a hero. His shock prod actually does less damage than BB-8 and his abilities aren't all that great. Obviously, his shock spin ability makes blasters overheat faster when in the radius, but if you're knocking the enemy away from you, then they'll just shoot from outside of it. And if a lightsaber hero is on full stamina, then they can still almost take you out from full health, despite it running out faster. His charge up ability is actually alright, especially if you want to take out multiple enemies without stamina loss. But BB9E unfortunately takes the number 22 spot, despite him being really fun to play. Next, we have Captain Phasma. Captain Phasma's blaster is pretty good with its fire rate and extra zoom, but I don't really think she's that great, seeing as to really survive with her, you need to stay away from the battle and stay near your sentry. Now, a lot of players like Captain Phasma, and a lot of players don't. She's just one of those heroes, and personally, I don't really like her as much as other heroes. A lot of the time, when Phasma players go too far out from their sentry's radius, they often end up dying, or at least from what I've seen anyway. I know that the developers added the ability to pick up your sentry so you don't have to wait for cooldown, but it's just a bit impractical. In the number 20 spot, we have Finn. Now originally, Finn and Phasma were the other way round, but I hadn't really given Finn a chance. I rarely played him because I didn't think he was that good, but in the making of this video I realised how good he can be. His Deadeye ability is definitely one of the best in the game. You have almost aimbot with it, and in the gameplay you were watching I managed to rinse a Palpatine down to very low health. But his other abilities aren't amazing, although you could say Big Deal is good, but just based on other players' stats and abilities, Finn has earned the 20th spot. Now in the 19th spot we have Chewbacca. Now sometimes Chewbacca can be really good and sometimes he can be just as bad. It really depends on the situation you're in. The fact that he still deals damage through blocks is great, and his Shock Grenade Furious Bowcaster combo can be deadly too. The reason why he is quite low, however, is because he has quite a large hitbox and moves quite slow, and sometimes he doesn't exceed as well as other heroes. If you do include the right star cards for Chewbacca, you could absolutely dominate, and I'm sure all his abilities would be great. But that's the same with a lot of other heroes. Next is the better of the two BB droids in my opinion. When comparing BB-8 and BB-9E, you realise how useful BB-9E's stun actually is, but the cable spin ability is really what sets BB-8 apart. Debatably one of the best abilities in the game, you can get really high kills with this if you just sneak into large groups of enemies and just use it in the middle of them. The rolling charge ability is also very good for finishing low enemies trying to run away from you, or if you're out of stamina. Like BB9E, I really enjoy playing BB-8, but there are better choices. In number 17th we have Iden Versio. I don't often play Iden Versio, but I do realise she can be pretty powerful. Her secondary fire is great for taking out large groups of enemies in small areas, and her stun droid primary fire combo is really strong as well. If you use the stun droid on an enemy hero and aim for the head, then you can do really high damage, in which I do to the Anakin in this gameplay. Her shield is also good to defend yourself in the open, and the pulse rifle is good too. So Iden is definitely a good hero, especially for playing a defensive role while still pushing enemies back. So from here in the hero ranking, I definitely think all heroes are very good. Next we have Boba Fett. Now personally I really like Boba Fett and I think he's pretty good. Although his rocket barrage has been nerfed a lot, which is disappointing, but it's still good to use when you're flying. His concussion rocket is alright, and I think the For the Hunt ability is really good. The infinite jetpack fuel is really useful, especially when you're in a tight situation. The thing that makes Boba stand out is his jetpack, making his mobility better than anyone else's in the game. Now in number 15 we have Lando. I don't play Lando very often along with quite a few other heroes, but he is actually alright. If you use the smoke to conceal yourself and then shoot with the thermal scope, you can get quite some good kills while also being hard to hit. His disabler is easy to avoid, but on the occasion that you do get an enemy with it and use it like Iden's stun aiming for the head, you can shred whoever is stunned. His sharpshot ability is pretty decent as well, so he is an all-round good hero. Next on the list we have Leia Organa. Leia has had the most changes out of any hero in the game by far. If she was still the same as she was at the start of Battlefront 2, then she would definitely be very low on this list, probably coming around number 20. But I've put her at number 14 because she's much better now. I definitely have a lot more fun playing her and all of her abilities are good. Her squad shield is really useful when you're surrounded, and it has way more health than the officer's shield. Her blaster ability is really good with good fire rate, damage, recoil and usage time being probably one of the best abilities in the game. Her thermal detonators are also useful as well, and it's also good that you have 3 of them. So Leia Organa takes the 4th place, probably being one of the best blaster heroes in the game. At number 13 is Bosk. Originally I didn't really like Bosk, but as I've played him more recently I've started to like him. His Deoxys Cloud is good to use in areas where enemies can't really get away, and his proximity mines are a really good trap to place down for clueless enemies to walk over. His grenade launcher is also really good, especially for fighting against large groups of enemies and damaging blocking heroes. The thing that really makes Bosk good is his infinite health regen. Unlike the other heroes, Bosk can regenerate his health all the way from 1 back to 600. Most heroes just have 150 to 250 with some exceptions, but max health regen is really good for a hit and run playstyle. Next on the list we have our first lightsaber hero being Darth Maul. Now as much as I would like to rank Darth Maul a bit lower, bugs and glitches have really ruined the ranking for him. He has high speed and high jump with abilities optimal for a fast paced aggressive playstyle. But when bugs happen and those abilities don't work, you are left pretty much defenseless, as your defense is your offense. For example, Darth Maul's chokehold hit detection has not been left in good shape, as it quite often doesn't work. However, apart from these bugs and glitches, Darth Maul can be really strong and enjoyable in the right hands, giving him the 12th place spot. The next hero on the ranking is Count Dooku. Dooku is also a very offensive character, and all his abilities can be really good. I do feel that the lightning ability has a very small area of effects, but he also has got good damage output with great swing speed, especially with the duelist ability. When this is activated, you can go ham on all your enemies, being granted the fastest swing speed in the game. So Count Dooku has made it into the 11th place. Now we are in the top 10, and I have chosen Yoda here. Personally, I don't really like Yoda as much as others in this game, just because I think there are more fun or better people to play. Although turning off your lightsaber and making yourself hard to spot is pretty fun to do. He's got an interesting set of abilities, with Unleash being his force ability. The fact that it charges up when blocking blaster fire is really good and can really help against heavies using their sentry. His rush attack is also really good, as it can still deal damage through villain blocks, unlike Luke's, which is actually really useful. Something else that's really amazing, and I don't know if this is a bug or supposed to be in the game, but Yoda can infinitely block Palpatine's lightning without losing stamina. So I've put Yoda at the start of the top 10, being a hard hero to hit and deal with. At number 9 I have put ObiWan. ObiWan in this game is definitely supposed to be played more defensively. He has more stamina than anyone else in the game, and it feels that he can block forever, especially if you have certain star cards equipped. The defensive rush is a very good ability, and all out push is good for its range, both of which abilities can quite easily lead to infantry eliminations. However, his Jedi mind trick isn't really that good, as it's quite easily avoidable and it doesn't really put enemies at that much of a disadvantage. In number 8 I've put Rey. Rey and ObiWan were difficult to choose between, but I ended up putting Rey just because she can be really difficult to deal with and her abilities can turn the odds in her favour in a matter of seconds. Unlike Obi-Wan's mind trick, Rey's genuinely does put the enemy at a large disadvantage, and if they're smart, they'll try to back up instead of trying to fight, as they will have a very low chance of winning. The Jedi mind trick really does give Rey a lot of options and can also end up with enemies walking off the edge of the map. I really do think this is a good ability. Insight is good as you can reveal enemies, and her rush is useful for knocking down aggressive enemies and making some distance. So Rey comes in at the 8th spot, being really difficult to deal with. Moving on to number 7, I have Emperor Palpatine. Palpatine is a very good hero who is tricky to deal with. His Chain Lightning is a good ability and is useful if a low health enemy has just ran away around a corner, or if you want to hit multiple enemies at once. His lightning being his main attack is actually pretty good, with both hands damage output being 100 per second, and the fact that it's an endless stream instead of a projectile means you are pretty much constantly doing damage and you pretty much can't miss. His stun ability is also good to get out of tight situations, and his forward dash where he spins forward is good for a speed boost and catching enemies off guard. Next on the ranking we have Han Solo. This may come as a surprise to some people, but Han is definitely one of the best heroes in the game and probably the best blaster hero. His DL-44 and all of his abilities are great for taking on all different kinds of opponents. Han is one of my highest level heroes and I do play him quite a lot. His sharpshooter ability can pretty much melt anyone's health to very low despite short usage time. His Detonite charge does loads of damage and is good for knocking down opponents, and it can easily be followed up with the shoulder barge, knocking them down again, making them even more vulnerable if they're still alive. Now we're into the top 5 heroes, and kicking it off I've put Anakin Skywalker. I know this will come as a surprise to a lot of people, but like Darth Maul, bugs and glitches have really dropped Anakin's position on the ranking. Anakin used to be by far the best hero in the game, then after multiple nerfs he was equal to the other heroes and not overpowered. But then the developers decided to nerf him again, making his passionate strike dealing a lot less damage, and with that nerf came a lot of bugs and glitches. One of the most annoying glitches is being stuck in the heroic might stance. Pretty much every time this has happened to me, I've ended up dying, and if I haven't, I've been very lucky, because what happens is, when you use heroic might and let go, it does leave you in the stance and stays until the maximum time you can hold it for, leaving you unable to move and therefore vulnerable. Though Anakin is still a very strong attacker when bugs and glitches aren't there, giving him the 5th spot. At number 4 is Kylo Ren. With Kylo you really can't go wrong. He is a solid hero nowadays, unlike he was at the start of the game. His frenzy ability is really good and his freeze can easily lead to the death of your enemies. His pull is really good for getting people to your feet, and you can easily get some good hits on with a high swing speed. I do think Kylo's freeze is really unique and useful for catching up to people or easily doing damage to them. Now we are in the top 3 heroes, getting close to number 1, and I have put Luke. Luke is a very good hero in this game, and I would rate him very close to the 1st and 2nd spot. He is the highest swing speed in the game apart from Count Dooku's duelist ability. His force push ability is really basic, but it's strong and useful. Repulse is good for taking out enemies around you. Rush is really good for getting behind enemies and performing follow-up attacks or abilities. Luke Skywalker really is a good hero in general. He always has been and he always will be. I haven't come across too many bugs with him, giving him the 3rd place spot. Now in the 2nd place spot we have General Grievous. General Grievous is really broken right now, and because the game isn't having any more support, he pretty much always will be. Being hit by Claw Rush is already hard to deal with and is annoying taking damage and being knocked down. But the fact that he can hit an enemy almost 6 times or more with one use is overpowered. This is the ability that makes him properly broken. He also has quite a few bugs right now, but unlike Anakin and Maul, the bugs are in his favour. The thrust surge is kind of buggy but in a good way, and unrelenting advance is great when used in the right situation. Personally, I don't really like Grievous too much because I don't often play him, and he has got very fast stamina drain. Though in the right hands he's almost unstoppable, and once again he is extremely broken. And that brings us to the number 1 spot, the character who I think is the best hero in Star Wars Battlefront 2. This obviously being Darth Vader. Vader is an absolute tank with high amounts of health and high damage output. He's almost unstoppable, and with star cards he can have almost 1000 health. All of Darth Vader's abilities are good, especially when you combine them together. His lightsaber throw, despite being nerfed, is still really good, and his focused rage lets him go crazy on enemies, giving him 200 extra health, which can lead to having 1100 health. This also gives him lower stamina drain, more damage output. He plows through enemies with ease. His choke is good for dealing damage, making enemies vulnerable, and you can even move enemies off the edge with it. So that concludes the number 1 spot being Darth Vader. I think he'll be the best hero for the rest of Battlefront 2, and if not, a very long time. So that's the end of this Star Wars Battlefront 2 hero ranking. I know this is a lot longer than a lot of my other videos, but I did spend weeks on this, so if you enjoyed or found this interesting, then like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you all next time.